Good evening, everyone. I'm meteorologist Dave Snider with you on this 4th of June. Thanks for watching Alaska Weather with us tonight. As always, we encourage you to stay up to date with your local weather information. You can find that on the Alaska Weather Information Line, 1-800-472-0391. Find us online at weather.gov/Alaska, and once you click on that map, you'll be taken to your local forecast office. One more click will get you to your forecast itself. You can bookmark that on your home screen or on your PC or a Mac device there, and certainly get your weather information a whole lot faster. Now, you can also find links on that page to the Alaska Aviation Weather Unit or links to your latest hydrograph. What's a hydrograph? That's the instrument we use to measure the river stages there close to your community and village. It's a very easy way to monitor the river levels there before you go out. Make sure you check on that anytime you want. And one word of caution there, at the water levels near Hoosley are still running a little bit high. They are expected to drop. For the very latest information, you can always find that online. And if you can't find what you're looking for, I encourage you to drop me an email. I'm happy to serve you any way I possibly can. Let's take a look at the fire danger as updated this morning around the state of Alaska. Generally, the highest fire danger and probably greatest risk region right now is around the upper Yukon and into the middle Yukon valleys there, all the way into the Yukon Flats and southward toward the Alaska Range. West of that is kind of hit and miss, but we do have some elevated areas of concern across southwest, the northwest, and parts of the southwestern interior up toward McGrath. As always, we encourage you to be careful with fire, and before doing any open burning, it's always a good idea to try and check in with your local fire officials to make sure that's an okay thing to do. Just because it's rained the day before doesn't mean that it's all clear and all safe. So just be extra careful there and consider the amount of wind that will be moving through your area in the next 24 hours. You look at the visible satellite picture here, and boy, it's this time of the year it's the best time to look at the visible satellite imagery. You can see a wave of low pressure here across the eastern Gulf, another one across the northern Gulf, and a great amount of clear, dry sky across the western and southwestern parts of Alaska. That means the sun is beating down and has been this morning. That sparked a line of shower and thunderstorm activity that was moving through the western interior and generally north and west of the Alaska Range, which you can see right here. Put this into motion one more time and keep your eye on this region right here. You can see that kind of wave suddenly blooming right up out of the sky. And shower and thunderstorms were developing, moving south and southeast. You'll probably run into more of that heading into parts of southwestern Alaska as we go into the evening hours. One other really cool thing you can notice here is the north winds that are working through the Bering Strait, hitting Nunivak Island and Meteorologists, and on the lee of that, the downwind side, it is drier. It is quite literally blocking and drying up the clouds as this system is moving southward. So take a close look at Meteorologists and Nunivak Island one more time and watch what happens throughout the day. You can just see that drying take shape right there across Nunivak Island and just west of Etolin Strait. The clouds are working their way through Etolin Strait just fine and into southwest, but hitting that island effectively stops that low-level moisture flow and dries the air out on the lee side of that. In the meantime, you can see plenty of cloud cover across the Bering and most of the Aleutians as well. A hodgepodge of clouds across the Gulf of Alaska and low clouds across the North Slope. Areas of fog and low stratus there across most of the Beaufort Seacoast and also across some of the northern sections of the Chukchi there with that northerly flow and easterly wind pushing some of that through the lowlands of the North Slope today. Here's a look at the weather map, and low pressure sitting across the upper Koyukuk Valley, 1,015 millibars on the south side of it. The air is relatively unstable, and that's moving southward very slowly, just as it was yesterday. Shower and thunderstorm activity will be expected in kind of the same old spots that we saw yesterday, and in some cases maybe a little bit more around southwestern Alaska as we head into the early evening hours. A weak frontal boundary sitting across the Copper River Basin and just north, right along the Alaska Range, really. To the east of that, across regions closer to Whitehorse and north of southeast, shower and thunderstorm activity has developed. Now, over the next couple days, this will be something to watch, and you'll see this on Thursday's chart. It looks like this area may drift a little bit further southward, so don't be surprised to run into shower and storm activity anywhere really from about Juneau and northward as this kind of layout changes just a little bit to the south. High pressure right now is sitting out across the Gulf, 1,018 millibars, a stronger area of high pressure across the Bering, and of course that is locking in that low stratus and fog as we're seeing, certainly across the northern parts into the Gulf of Anadyr and across the eastern Russian coast, but also into parts of Norton Sound, and then locking some of that in up to the north thanks to high pressure generally north and east of the Arctic coast for this afternoon. As we get into tonight, the risk of shower and storm activity will gradually wane. It certainly has plenty of work to work with as we head toward the solstice here in just a matter of weeks. Showers continue across the Yukon Flats and into parts of the Copper River Basin tonight. We're also looking for the opportunity for storm activity around the Chugach and maybe into the Kenai Mountains. A much better chance of that as we go forward into your Wednesday and Thursday. Showers will be possible across southeast. We expect high pressure to sit in its place very close to the Pribilofs and out to the west. A few areas of showers for the central and western chain. As we get into Wednesday, the orientation of our weather pattern across the mainland really doesn't change that much. And so once again, the Kenai Mountains, Chugach, and into the Talkeetnas, and certainly to the west along the Alaska Range stand a decent chance of seeing shower and storms develop in the heat of the day. Showers will be a little more likely across northern parts of southeast and the higher train of southeast. The best chance for storm activity will really remain across the international border into western Canada, but there is going to be that sag in that weather system. So if we're going to see storms develop, it could start approaching northern parts of southeast as early as tomorrow. Again, much more likely as we get into Thursday. Showers will be possible here across the Brooks Range and to the west. A better chance that'll be storm activity. High pressure sitting out across the Bering at 1,030 millibars will lock in low stratus and clouds, and some of that could still hover over Norton Sound, St. Lawrence Island, and into the Gulf of Anadyr and around the Chukchi Coast. The orientation of high pressure up across the Beaufort might pull away some of that fog just a little bit, but it will be very close by. And out across the west, you can see showers still pretty unsettled there across the western chain as low pressure is trying to develop way out across the Kuril Islands. Low pressure in the northern Pacific is also creeping its way northward. We've got a high here across the Gulf, 1,027 millibars, connected to the other very stable region of air across the Bering at 1,029 millibars. And the combination of these two kind of shuffling around a little bit will push that low across the mainland just a little bit further east. So once again, as we head into Thursday, shower and storm activity will be very close to south central and southwest. A better chance for shower activity across the south-facing slopes of the Brooks Range. And we've added that storm symbol there now across the northern parts of southeast as that low pressure wave sits right across the spine of the North American Rockies. So as we go through the next several days, southern parts, especially the southern third of Alaska, will be generally unstable and capable of supporting shower and storm activity. Overall, though, it is going to be warm. Take a look at the temperatures. As we get into tonight, mid to upper 40s for many in southeast. For south central, probably mid to upper 40s there as well, maybe even closer to 50 degrees around Bristol Bay and all the way up toward McGrath and Galena. Lower to mid 40s for parts of the interior. Fairbanks also fairly mild at 45. And the North Slope, well, you can see the effects of that east and northeast wind, 20s and 30s there, many below freezing along the coast. For the Alaska Peninsula, the Pribilofs, the Aleutian Chain, 40s at least, and some cases like St. Paul probably dropping to 37. Gamble and Savunga also down to about 35. A high of 54 in Nome tomorrow, and you'll notice many in the interior are just blasting away with the heat. Upper 60s, lower 70s for Tanana, Galena, all the way down toward Bristol Bay in the mid to upper 60s as well. Pushing 70 in Talkeetna, 62 in Kodiak, a blistering hot day for you. 50s and 60s for southeast. For the North Slope, that east and northeast wind still having an impact. 30s and 40s there for Utqiagvik all the way toward Prudhoe Bay, Dead Horse, Kaktovik about 34. 40 in Shishmaref, still looking sort of cool there. 52 in Kotzebue. You'll see 40s along the south and western coast and 40s and 50s for the Aleutian Chain. Low temperatures as we head into Thursday morning, still mild across parts of southeast, mid to upper 40s, maybe even 50 degrees around Haines and Skagway, Yakutat 45. Mid 40s around Prince William Sound, 42 in Homer overnight, 50 in Kodiak, 40s for most of the Alaska Peninsula and the Chain, 37 for St. Paul, St. George, 37 around Macoriac as well. And mid to upper 40s, maybe even 50 degrees for the lower Koyukuk Valley and the middle Yukon and even the upper Tanana Valley, fairly mild. The North Slope temperatures may drop just below freezing there around Utqiagvik, looking at 33 around Prudhoe Bay, Dead Horse, 31 for Kaktovik, and 37 for Point Hope and Point Lay and many of the communities out west. Wainwright will see a high of 39 on Friday, or Thursday I should say. 40s and 50s, 30s and 40s for the North Slope, and across the middle Yukon Valley, temps climb up above 70 degrees once again for Fairbanks, Tanana, and southward into McGrath, probably Galena. Around Dillingham, King Salmon, Lake Iliamna, you're looking at temps at least in the mid to upper 60s again, fairly mild there. And look at Grayling and Anvik, temps there all in the mid to upper 50s. Unalakleet 53, but cooler closer to the water, 47 there for Macoriac and 46 for St. Paul. South Central in the upper 60s, 63 in Kodiak, with southeast looking at temperatures in the mid 60s on your Thursday. And now, aviation weather around Alaska. And on to your aviation weather now. IFR conditions are expected to continue across the North Slope all the way down through the Bering Strait and most of the west coast. You'll see some openings there around Cape Newenham and into parts of Southwest, but a large part of Bristol Bay and the Alaska Peninsula will start out tomorrow under IFR conditions. That'll spread over the Kodiak Island region and up into the outer portions of Prince William Sound up toward Cordova. And then for many sections in Southeast, we're looking at an MVFR start for your daytime tomorrow. Most of the interior blasted with full sunshine from night to day and day back to night, if there is such a thing this time of the year. Out in Southwest, a generally VFR start for Wednesday as well. For the afternoon, watch for shower and thunderstorm activity to return once again, even after today. We expect to see a fairly widespread area of convection from the central interior, generally around southern Koyukuk, the Yukon Valley, southward into Bristol Bay, and into south central over the Susitna Valley, the Mat-Su, and over the Kenai Peninsula, as well as the Anchorage region. For southeast, we expect generally VFR conditions there should be okay. IFR continues close to the coast through the Bering Strait, St. Lawrence Island, and the northern coast of the Yukon Delta into the eastern chain and most of the Alaska Peninsula as well. By Thursday, a little bit of convection may be lingering around the Yukon Valley. Otherwise, back to IFR for the North Slope, the Bering Strait, Seward Peninsula, Nome included, the Yukon Delta pushing into the Kuskokwim and probably into areas very close to Bethel, so watch for that. For Southwest, we expect to see areas of IFR mainly along the chain and into the Gulf. MVFR to start around the Mat-Su Valley, the Alaska Range, and then across the northern Gulf Coast, with Southeast starting to see a little bit more of an impact for coastal locations with MVFR and IFR. That should hold off for the most part as we go through Thursday afternoon. There is a chance for convection across Haines and Skagway in the northern parts of the southeast region as we get into Thursday afternoon, and we're still looking at continued opportunities for shower and storm activity around south central and southwest again for Thursday afternoon, with IFR continuing to linger near the North Slope. Here's your pass conditions, though, for Wednesday. Things look pretty good for Anaktuvik Pass, VFR. Adigan Pass may be holding on to a little bit of MVFR as we go through the day, VFR to finish, though, so things do improve as we go. Lake Clark and Merrill Pass, we expect to see marginal conditions throughout the afternoon, convections possible in the region. Same goes for Rainy Pass. Watch for improvements as we go into the afternoon. Windy Pass, probably VFR all day, but we are watching for shower and storm activity in the region. Isabel Pass, also watching for storm development by the afternoon. VFR conditions there, as well as Mentasta Pass, a lesser chance for storm activity as you head further eastward. Tanita Pass, also looking at shower and storm activity in the afternoon. VFR conditions throughout the day. MVFR for Portage, we'll probably see some storms over the Kenai Range and also over the Chugach. So if you're moving through that region, you're likely to see storm development in the afternoon. Chilkoot and White Pass right now look to move from MVFR to VFR conditions. Freezing levels indicate that there's still a couple pockets of cooler air around the northern Gulf in the vicinity of low pressure, and out across the western Bering, anywhere from 4,000 to 6,000 feet there. But most of the interior, most of south central and southwest, and really for that matter southeast, is looking at freezing levels at or above 6,000 feet. So you can see not a whole lot of change there across most of the mainland. Icing potential is still fairly high up there, especially across the west. Levels there above 12,000 feet or so for isolated moderate across the western chain. We do have some pockets of moisture lingering around the central and eastern interior, and those levels are ranging about 8,000 to 9,000 feet right now for isolated moderate. And of course, any convection in the area, especially with thunderstorms, it does imply isolated but severe potential for icing, so avoid those at all costs. Northern parts of southeast also looking at some pretty high level icing potential above 10,000 feet. The jet stream right now has got a lot of thumps and bumps, and as that's diving over the northern Pacific, you can see it never really makes that main channel back into Alaska, so that's keeping us on the active and north side. We have a northerly influence right now. It's going to steer a lot of the storm motion over south central and southwest today. High pressure sitting across the Arctic trying to push cooler air into the region. Not going to happen, it looks like. We've got a lot of easterly wind moving in from the continent, and that's going to keep most areas in south central and southwest warm. Across southeast, you can see that north and easterly flow there. Low pressure on your southern end, low pressure across the north slope, a weak northwesterly flow, and high pressure out across the Bering Sea. Positions of these don't really change a whole lot as we get into your Wednesday there. Low pressure still sitting up north, and kind of a north and westerly flow working through the mainland there. Most areas looking at winds aloft around 10 to 15 knots, and a northwesterly flow is working over southeast. That's about 10 to 15 knots at this time. And for most of the chain, about 15 to 30 knots there for most regions. Now, we are going to see a little bit of a stronger wind flow. Most of that will be across Adak, Akka, out toward Kiska Island and Shemya, generally below 4,000 feet, and a little bit of chop out across the southwest, mainly across the southwestern Capes. And again, watching for convection throughout the day. Any thunderstorm activity does imply the opportunity for isolated severe convection. Welcome to another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. I'm meteorologist Dave Snider with the National Weather Service, and joining us today, two more people to talk about the augmented reality sandbox. It's Alana Valaji. She's a University of Alaska Fairbanks mechanical engineering student, helped design and work on the details to make this new type of sandbox there. Thanks for joining us, Alana. Thanks. And Courtney Breest, she's the outreach coordinator for AKwx, which is the experimental program to stimulate competitive research. It's a program funded nationally by the National Science Foundation, right?
Yes.
Okay. Alana, tell us about how you changed and adapted this version of the augmented reality sandbox. It's a really cool tool.
So Gina approached us with 3 goals for this new version of the sandbox. They wanted it to be compact in a light system that could travel around the state. They wanted it to be child-oriented, so we designed the sandbox to have 3 different levels.
Okay.
It's pretty cool. You can have younger children, you can have high school kids. I guess I should say high school teenagers.
Sure.
And then we also designed it to be more marketable, user-friendly, so that this could be seen eventually in classrooms all over the place, all over the state.
Okay. And you had a big hand in this, but this was a team approach, right?
Definitely. It was a really good experience for myself, for George Stevens, who we'll see later.
One of our hand models today. Yeah.
For 2 other members who aren't here today, Cody Klingman and Austin Hunt. And it was just a really good learning experience all around.
Very good. And this is something that is part of your learning experience as well, so you get to check a box in your education.
Yeah,
right?
it's a requirement for seniors of mechanical engineering at University of Alaska Fairbanks.
Very good. Very good. Well, it is a wonderfully inquisitive tool, fun to play with, and I hope to get my hands in the sand here in just a little bit. But it's also part of a bigger program, something that we were talking about a moment ago, AKwx, and that's what Courtney is here to tell us more about. What is AKwx and why do you need a sandbox?
Well, AKwx, as you mentioned, is a national program. We're funded nationally, but we're actually located statewide. We're at UAF, we're at UAA, we're in Southeast at UAS, and she mentioned, you know, taking the sandbox as an educational tool, and that's where I'm an outreach coordinator for the South Central test case.
Okay.
Our focus is on the Kenai watershed, and we are really interested in using these tools like the sandbox to interact with the students down there and get them interested in STEM and also communicate the research findings that we've been having throughout the state.
Okay. And one of those, as George and Eric are kind of changing the contours for us there from UAF to maybe something that resembles a little bit of something more of the Kenai watershed, which is one of your focuses for the study, right? And specifically looking at some of the changes there and how that impacts people and also the salmon.
Yes, it is all of our research is social and environmental.
Okay.
So we have social scientists working hand in hand with our environmental scientists. One of the things we're studying is Upper Russian Lake, and we have a researcher taking sediment cores from that lake. So one of the things we're going to use the sandbox to communicate is how the landscape changed over a long period of time, thousands of years, going from glacier, covered by glacier ice, to being filled with water. And then
that's what they're doing right now.
Exactly. So
live.
So they're moving
cool.
the water around. And then I think they've got some props over there, because we're also going to go a little bit more in depth and explain how the salmon got there.
Okay.
So using
there's
these,
the salmon.
Exactly. Oh, I think there's a few more.
Yeah, we like more salmon in Alaska. More salmon.
Yeah, exactly. So it's really taking the findings from our research grant and just trying to connect with the community and translate it in a really hands-on and exciting way, so people can, you know, interact with us as much as possible.
Well, sure. That makes the learning and the science real and quite literally in your face, rather than just some boring black and white paper that you have to read about. This is something that people can understand better because it's visual and they're touching and feeling and seeing these changes, right?
Yeah, and get them engaged. And then outreach is a huge component, and working with the younger students, and actually even, I mean, working with the UAF graduate and engineering students it's a huge part of our grant, and we really enjoy it.
Oh, it is wonderfully exciting. And so, Alana, you were telling us that this is built to travel.
Right.
And this is built to do more things than version 1. Where can this type of project go in Alaska? And what can it demonstrate?
I mean, we were hoping to eventually get to villages that were harder to reach, that you couldn't necessarily move a whole fixed instrument to, right? You need something that can pack up, fit in your truck bed. I mean, one of the most attractive parts of this project is that this was going to be something that was used past our graduation point. You know, this is going to be something that lives in the state for years.
Right, right. Well, it looks like you're well on your way with that. So what are, give me another example. What else can this show us? We've talked about the Kenai River watershed. What's the coolest thing that you've played in the sand with? What's your idea?
Well, I definitely enjoy the props, but we also like kind of building up a giant mound, and if you put some water behind it, you can make a little runway, I guess, and you know, demonstrate the effects of the hydrology by just putting up a dam and letting it all pour right down. And so that could, I think you mentioned it earlier, you could even demonstrate the effects of a tsunami.
Right.
Or something along those lines.
So it's not just topography, but it's also hydrology and coastal surge mapping and some of the coastal changes that we're seeing here in Alaska, and seeing what the smaller changes in the sandbox might do to kind of a real effect of a slosh or a push of water up on the coast. Tsunami inundation mapping, or even glacial dam release, as some has been demonstrated before. So wow, that's just an impressive thing. That it seems like the possibilities are nearly endless with this, and probably even more ideas that are popping up in your head too.
Yeah, as we speak.
Very cool. All right. Well, if folks want to get more information about AKwx, you guys are online. You're on Facebook, Twitter, and on YouTube. AKwx, right? AKwx, Alaska AKwx, that is. And again, you guys are funded by the National Science Foundation, so more to come from that, and a longer-term study there. Thank you, ladies, for joining us today. Congratulations on your hard work there. This is really fun. And for now, I'm meteorologist Dave Snider with this edition of Alaska Weather Facts, and I'm going to go play in the sandbox there. We'll see you next time.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
And back with your marine weather now, and a look at the ice edge. You'll notice a large area of open water across the Beaufort seacoast. Marginal ice still lingers just to the north, and what is shore fast is breaking off in bits and chunks and will likely be out there in the flow. You also have a large area of open water here across a good chunk of the Chukchi, and marginal ice coverage there from Wainwright all the way down toward Point Lay, and it's pretty much gone by the time you get down to Point Hope. No expectation that this region here is going to open up in the next couple days, but things are changing and things are fairly warm right now, but we do have a little bit of a cool period sitting on top of us. The next couple days, a northeasterly flow will be moving through the region, and with that, temperatures at night anyway will be close to that freezing point. So make sure you check in on the latest information before you head out. Weather.gov/Anchorage/ice for your very latest information there. In southeast, winds are going to be fairly light. Light south wind inside of Stevens Passage up to the Lynn Canal, 10 knots, 2-foot seas in most areas there. You're looking at a northwest flow across the outer coast, 15 knots and 4 to 5-foot seas on Wednesday. For Thursday, not a lot of change. Winds pick up a little bit south of Sitka toward Craig with a 6-foot sea there. Southerlies pick up a little bit more heading up through Stevens Passage and the Lynn Canal, 10 to 15 knots, and you're talking about 2 to 3-foot seas. Winds stay light from the north and west through Clarence Strait. A 2-foot sea expected on that 10-knot wind. And you'll see a little bit more of a westerly flow coming into Yakutat and Icy Cape. For south central, winds stay light inside of Prince William Sound. A light west breeze, 10 knots, 2-foot seas there. Southerlies on the outside. South and westerlies across the Barrens and up toward the Kenai Fjords, and southerlies through the Cook Inlet region. 10 knots and 2-foot seas there all the way past Kenai and into areas just outside of Anchorage. For your Thursday, a south and west wind continues, only 1-foot seas there up across the north and central parts of Cook Inlet, a little bit more of a westerly flow across the Barrens, and you're talking about 10 to 15 knots with 2 to 3-foot seas. South and westerlies coming up into Prince William Sound. They'll stay pretty light across the inside parts of the Sound. Outside into the northern Gulf, 15 knots and about 3 to 4-foot seas. All in all, pretty nice weather there, and it's going to be warm. South and westerlies through Shelikof Strait on Wednesday, 15 knots, 4-foot seas. They're about the same on the other side of the island and down to the south. A little bit more of a northwesterly flow crossing the Alaska Peninsula. 4 to 5-foot seas there in that northwesterly wind at 15 knots. Inside of Bristol Bay on Thursday, westerlies at 15 with a 4-foot sea, 5-foot seas down the Alaska Peninsula, and a west and south or northwesterly flow across the Pacific waters. Look for light winds inside of Shelikof Strait, 3-foot seas there, 4-foot seas on the east side of Kodiak Island with a 15-knot wind. For the Aleutians, high pressure's in charge out west, and you're going to see lighter winds across the central and eastern parts of the chain. 4 to 6 foot seas there across the Pacific waters, 7 to 8 foot seas there. This is the return southerly flow ahead of another area of low pressure out in the west, but high pressure is feeding into that as well, so you get a little bit of a faster flow out across the western Bering. For Thursday, winds come up a little bit more across the Pacific coast, anywhere from 8 to 11 foot seas. East and northeasterlies across the Bering Sea coast, and 15 to 25 across the west. 8 foot seas expected from Adak to Kiska out towards Shemya on Thursday. For the west coast, expect 15 to 20 knot winds there. Generally light or small seas around Norton Sound, 4 to 5 foot seas across areas from St. Lawrence Island to Nunivak Island to St. Paul, St. George, St. Matthew. 3 foot seas around the Pribilofs. 8 foot seas, though, thanks to a stronger north flow cutting into the Kuskokwim Delta region. An 8 foot sea there, 20 knot winds expected. Stays about the same on Thursday. Seas may subside just a little bit. Otherwise, 10 to 15 knots in all areas. 3 to 4 foot seas heading out into the central Bering. You can see the effects of high pressure right here, really smashing the seas down. Northeasterlies around St. Paul and St. George on Thursday. For the North Slope, easterlies will be the strongest, it looks like, around Prudhoe Bay and Kaktovik, 20 to 25 knots, 5 to 6 foot seas in the open waters. Small seas around Utqiagvik still have a lot of marginal and high concentration ice here. A southeasterly flow across the Chukchi coast, 10 to 15. We're expecting 1 to 3 foot seas there in the open water. Not a really big change there on Thursday. Northwesterlies coming into Kotzebue Sound at 15 knots with 2 foot seas, and 4 to 5 foot seas in the open waters there around the Beaufort. Look for smaller seas in the open water north of Utqiagvik, and an offshore flow from Wainwright down to Point Lay, about 10 knots there with 2 foot seas. Recapping tonight's weather, shower and thunderstorm activity will be the main feature across the interior, down the western parts of the Alaska Range, and into southwestern Alaska and south central, especially over the mountains. So Talkeetna, Chugach, Kenai Mountain ranges, you're all expecting to see shower and storm activity. The trend will be true the next couple days as well. We're also watching shower and storms across western Canada, especially around Whitehorse and British Columbia, the further south you go. As this sort of backs southward as we get into Wednesday and Thursday, there's a much better chance we'll get some convection or shower and storm activity into northern parts of southeast as well. So keep watch on that. For Wednesday, the main activity will be across south central, southwest, and the southern interior. And we expect similar results as we go into Thursday, again with an increasing chance for shower and storms across northern parts of southeast, and cool weather up north.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.